Next Roman numeral, we talk a bit about reform, Roman numeral 6. Two big areas here. You've got temperance, which is alcohol, and then just general vice, which is sin. So we start with temperance movement. The temperance movement is yet another movement to try to ban alcohol in the United States. It would eventually be known as prohibition, but at this point it's called temperance. The big organization here is the WCTU, otherwise known as the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which is what it sounds like. It argues for temperance on behalf of the Christian faith, the idea being that Christianity and morality and so forth, all of that working together. You also had the Anti-Saloon League, which is what it says on the tin. They hated saloons and so forth. They argued that alcohol leads to social problems, like gambling, to abandonment, adultery, all sorts of things. And so the idea is that by cutting off drink, you will stop all those other problems. It'll stop, people philandering. It'll cut down on unemployment, etc. Most of the time, these took the forms of things like protest marches and trying to control government or influence government. The Anti-Saloon League tended to be a bit more political than the WCTU. The WCTU tended to be a bit more just, showing parades and things like that. And then sometimes they just got really weird, like Carrie Nation. Carrie Nation was a woman who took an axe and stood in the doorways of bars and tried to kill people. Not literally, but I'm serious. She has an actual battle axe, and she stood there swinging the axe at people when they were trying to come in the bar and scaring them away. She was, of course, I believe, arrested several times. But again, this is just how strongly people felt about the issue at this point. This connects back to the larger concept of just vice. Vice is sin and so forth. The logic being that as the cities got big, and especially with all those foreigners moving in, the theory was that we were losing our moral way. So we were trying to come up with laws and things to fight this moral turpitude and end vice and so forth. A lot of this comes across as kind of silly. For example, Comstock. Anthony Comstock, 1873, was the Postmaster General of New York. As part of it, his job was to make sure no obscene materials go through the mail. The problem was that Comstock had a really narrow or really broad definition, I should say, a really broad definition of what exactly was obscene. For example, he was famous for doing things like stopping medical textbooks from going through the mail because they included naked pictures. Pictures of famous works of art could be stopped because, again, they were naked. There's also a famous version, the Comstock Bible, in which he took out all of the begatting in the Bible. Because, again, that would be fornication, and that's a no-no. This whole movement, or this whole idea, created a larger term called Comstockery. Comstockery is a negative or an insulting term. It refers to censorship without regard to content, because there's a difference between the Statue of David and Playboy magazine. Yes, in both cases, it's somebody without their pants on, but somebody's got a work of art and the other one isn't. So Comstockery became sort of the slang term for just censorship for the sake of censorship. It's a term that still gets used today. It's the reason why, the school's email filter won't let you visit the Tyson Chicken website because it contains the word breast. Really, it used to do that. I'm not sure if it still does because I'm not on the student server and I'm guessing most of you aren't either. Wink, wink. Moving on. You've also got the idea of the social gospel. The social gospel was the idea of living your life as Jesus would want. It comes from a book called In His Steps in 1898. 1898, name's not coming to mind. I want to say Rossenbach. Someone look this up, please. Somebody with the phone and or the internet. I'll wait. Good, got it, okay. Whoever they said is the correct author is probably right. So in any case, the whole point of In His Steps, though, his being Jesus, the idea being that we should live our lives as Jesus would want, and therefore simply by modeling his behavior, we could then convince others of the goodness of it, and therefore change others and fix others and so forth. The last sort of part of this anti-vice movement is the idea of the settlement house. Settlement houses were basically like community centers, but for moral purposes. The first one was in Chicago. It was called Hull House. The idea was that it was a place where you could go to sober up, to learn more about morality, to become a better person, but without the negative overtones that doctors had at that time. If you went to seek addiction, you were a monster because, only terrible people got addicted. So Hull House and other settlement houses were designed to help provide you with health and safety and recovery without necessarily the same negative stigma that you might get from admitting addiction or from going to jail and so forth. So, short, sweet, we move on. Education, next.